Okay, so welcome. We're just rolling with the energy here and just jumped over from a Facebook Live to Zoom to have a clear way to connect for our video call today, speaking with Eric LaBrecque of Applied Storytelling about how our narratives create our realities and how we can use that understanding to our benefit. So I've already talked quite a bit about Eric on on the Facebook Live, but I just want to say a little bit here for the sake of history. That I worked with Eric with a company that I worked for some years back, and I was just so moved by how deep his work is, and it's not what I had ever really imagined branding and marketing is. And so that's why I invited him to come and be on the Inner Council of Master Teachers in the Innerglowing Quantum Academy for this journey of becoming the gift you are. And becoming the gift you are is it's a monthly offering. Every month there's one master teacher offering a class or an experience within the academy, as well as we have a private Facebook group where we do a lot of great processing, sharing, and witnessing, and then a call with me every month where we directly work that energy and share and receive group coaching in that space. So I am so stoked to have attracted Eric to do this. I have long seen him as a great teacher. And so I told his wife, who is an amazing writer and brand strategist in her own right, and also mine. She's been wrangling some of my copy. I told her that I fully intend on taking credit for Eric's debut as a teacher online. So welcome, Eric. And is there anything you'd like to say in our opening here before we dive into the meat of whatever we're going to talk about?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I caught your very kind words while I was fumbling to make a connection. And I would reiterate that, in my everyday life, I don't think of myself as a teacher most of the time in most ways. I spend a lot of time with storytelling. It's an approach I use to brand building. So my time is spent with companies and organizations, large and small, helping them to craft their stories to accomplish certain things in the marketplace. And that may be going into a new market, attracting a new audience, explaining a merger, redefining the category that they're in, all these different kinds of things that they can use. But I do believe that there are relevant overlaps. There's a lot of value in storytelling and perhaps in building a personal brand that I see. And I did come to the work I do in the corporate world from an understanding that there is an aspect of healing, even in corporate environments, from figuring out your story. I see a lot of my corporate clients as basically having communications issues. They're mute, or they're tongue-tied, or they can't find the right words. I mean, these are all things that we experience as people, and we look for ways to overcome them. Also, I've really been fascinated, really, since I was a little boy, in how you can use stories to accomplish all kinds of things. My daily life, my profession, I use them in the marketplace. But I think about, folks who go through great challenges in life, and how the narratives that they construct for themselves can help them to get through the great challenges. There's a great book called Man's Search for Meaning by a writer named Otto Frankl, who came out of the Holocaust experience. And he observed that the people who survived, in addition to having incredible luck and good fortune oftentimes, had stories that gave them personal meaning and to kind of endure and see their way through. And that always stayed with me. And so I guess that's my way of saying it's a privilege to start to apply some of these thoughts and experiences to personal realm, the realm of achieving personal goals and growing personally and spiritually in different ways. We'll see where it goes.
Cool. The book that you mentioned, I'm terrible with names.
Oh, sure.
But is he also the Gestalt therapy guy? That name sounds similar to me.
Yeah, he might be. His last name is Frankl. So
Uh-huh.
Otto Frankl. A lot of and he's one of many people who have informed my professional practice who really aren't in the world of marketing or brands at all. Storytellers in different rights, playwrights, they're cartoonists, they're psychologists, different people have come into play for this very narrow world that I live in. But the larger world that they're dealing in is often about growth and meaning and getting through things and achieving your goals and all that.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to check in and mute somebody here. Okay. I think we should be. So, okay, cool. Great. All right. So, I have so many questions.
I could keep going if you want.
Well, one thing that's pinging for me, just right now, that might be an interesting entry point for us is what are the blocks people have to telling their stories in ways that are clear and in service and profitable?
Great question. There are probably a lot of pieces to an answer to that. One of the blocks, I think, is getting out of your own way, in part. I think that as humans, we have a natural function to create meaning in our lives. I think we do that as a matter of course. And so one of the blocks is understanding that you are not your story. And maybe you start with that. I don't think at the end of your life, your life story replays in some meaningful way. I think other things probably happen to you then. But when you understand that, the thing that you think is you, that's your story, is a construct, then you can get out of the way and start to think, well, how can I shape it? What can I use it for? And I think those are, what can I use it for, I think is an interesting place to start. And again, I'm probably betraying my, marketing and brand building professional roots when I say that. But when we're building a story for a company, we start with the vision. What is it that the company ultimately sees in the world? What's the role the company ultimately wants to play? And I think that the first step for someone creating their own backstory, their own narrative is that, what do you want to accomplish? What's the vision that you're pursuing for yourself? What's the role you ultimately want to play in the world? And then you build a narrative that makes sense for that. It'll be true. It'll be true to you if you're honest with yourself, but it doesn't have to reflect every aspect of you or be something that you say is is you in your totality. So get out of the way, and don't think that the story that you've been telling yourself every day is the story that you need to keep telling to accomplish certain goals. And start with your vision. You want to, how you want to see yourself in the world, what it is that you want to achieve. So that would be the first step.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say hello to everyone watching and to myself, because I can feel like there's like a heaviness around that and like why we have those blocks. And I'm realizing as you're talking, Eric, that yeah, that's like my realm where I help people, do the inner work to clear, how they come to have, the resistance to crafting a story and a meaning that actually works for them, that they like. And I think you really nailed it around that you are not your story. And yet they're so like, oh, right in there. So let's all breathe. That's like, I find the number one tool is to just like, okay, we can relax into this. It's okay. Like we might have some blocks around it and we're here like being curious about it right now. So what do you find is at the heart of why anybody really even wants to tell a story?
Well, I think the desire to connect, starting with yourself. I mean, I think let's go back to what a story is in a way, at least how we define it. It's probably a lot of things that are, it's probably many things at once, but you know, for us, it's a construct that combines meaning and emotion. You know, it's the ultimate human invention, if you will, of bringing meaning and emotion together. You look at things and you make sense of them and you feel them at the same time. You know, we can get meaning in other ways and we can get emotion in other ways, but those two things working together are very, very potent. So I guess that's the starting point. To get back on track here with where we go from there.
Well, so it's what I hear is that it's a desire to feel a certain way.
Yeah, based on the meaning in your life, you know, and I mean that those are profound drives.
Yeah.
To have meaning, to figure out what the point of being here is for you, and to feel that point fully, to experience being here in the fullest way. So that's the drive that is at work in us, I think, at least an irrational side and the ego side, all the time. It's constant, and we're constantly creating and recreating and deepening and extending our narratives. Getting back to the idea that you know, you are not your narrative, and to some extent you need to get out of the way of it. I think of a metaphor of our lives. I mean, we're born, we grow up, we grow old, we die, and you can say like we're like a flower. You know, there's a pattern to it. There's a moment where, you know, all the petals are fresh, and there's a moment where it's starting to fade a little bit. There's a moment where it's, you know, not with us anymore. And I think that idea that our lives are stories can be misled by that understanding that of how we grow and develop. And I think there's a story that goes with that pattern, with that unfolding. Maybe there is, but that's not the story that I'm here to talk about today, or the kind of story. I'm thinking more of stories as tools that we can use, that we can construct.
Yeah, me
and
too.
I would sure, yeah, that nobody here thinks that the story that you have, again, is this kind of endless loop that you can't get out of. If you have a vision, you have a goal that's in that vision, then the story is a way to help you feel that, to help you envision the vision, to help inhabit the moment of what that looks like in your future, inhabit the moments that you can experience along the way, and also to gauge milestones. If your story, you know, if your vision is a certain thing, and the story that you craft to get yourself there is running up against roadblocks, or isn't getting you towards that vision, then you can ask why not. And I think you should constantly be in a position of questioning yourself and asking, am I moving closer towards that desired end goal, that, you know, future that I envision? And if not, figure out where that's not happening, figure out what's out of alignment, and then construct the narrative, reconstruct it, update it.
Yeah.
Quite a liberating experience for people, I hope.
Yeah, I find it is. And so I want to highlight a tool that I heard that you just shared, which is to, when you said recognize the milestones. Mm-hmm. And in my work, I call that initiations. Those moments when we like are brave enough to go like, this is the gold. I did that, you know, even though it was like, and it's like that, like there's a pony somewhere in this pile of shit kind of thing, that there are these milestones, these rites of passage we go through And when we begin to look at this, you know, to reconstruct our stories from that view, that can bring us into the present time to then start to use that to create, rather than, you know, being in those endless loops, you know, where we're like, it's just all shit. There's no pony.
For sure. I mean, the story, if you aren't getting a sense of agency from your story, then you need to change the narrative, which is maybe easier than said than done, but at least hearing that will help those of us who think about the narratives that we have and approach them critically and, you know, work on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very much, I hear and I feel a match with what we're doing in Becoming the Gift You Are. It is a harnessing of the archetypes and the archetypal journeys. And, you know, something that I recognize is that if you're not aware of the archetypes that are at play in your life and your business, then you are their bitch. Like, it's the lowest common denominator of those stories that are being told about, you know, whatever collective concepts you're plugging into. However, when you are willing to like wake up to them, then you get to choose the higher forms of those stories, and then they work for you in your life.
That's interesting. Archetypes come into our work as well, in a way, probably not as central to what I do as to what you do. But I think that people do find patterns that have very deep roots in our psyches, very deep roots in our beings that correspond to archetypes. And there are a set number of them. People in, you know, the different people I read have different ways of classifying them and organizing them, different numbers of them. You probably have a specific set, but the thing I would say about archetypes for the kind of work that I'm doing, and I guess we're talking about here, is don't go into a storytelling exercise by choosing the archetype. Make that something that you do after you've done some other work to think about your goals and think about the assets within you, the strengths that you have, the actions you're going to take to realize those goals, and then look and see what the archetypal pattern is that resonates with that. Otherwise, I think it can be a little bit of a trap. There's a reason why certain archetypes resonate with us, and I think we can honor that, but I also think that we need to come around to that before starting out with that search. I think that's part of how we arrive at what the authentic story for us might be. I want to share a little practical piece of wisdom here, not wisdom, just practical tool. But I realize when I talk about, you know, understanding your vision, that without some cue as to how you might go about that, it's all moot, you know, in a way. So one of the things that we do, a really simple exercise just to get the conversation going with our clients, is put up, it's almost like a Mad Lib. It's a little simple statement with some blanks in it, and we ask the folks involved to fill in the blanks. And the statement goes something like this: I envision a world in which blank has come to pass, and in this world, my role in this world, my role is blank, or to help this world become a reality, I will blank. You know, I think you might need more than 5 minutes to fill it out, or at least to think about what you feel there, but that's a starting point. Another thing that we use, it's a little bit of a tool for this part of storytelling, is to imagine that end state as a headline. You know, it's a certain point in the future where you realize you've gone really far towards realizing it, and thinking, well, what's the headline that might be told, or what's the legacy I would leave? What's the statement that I wish someone would make at my funeral? Just things like that, where you're stepping outside of yourself a little bit and using fiction in a way as a tool to look back and kind of confirm and flesh out what you're driving at.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, and there are ways that we work with that in the Quantum Academy as well that are very similar. so I want to anchor right now that actually the journey of becoming the gift you are is we are leading up to working with archetypes and emotional alchemy in well, we're planned to November, so up to November at this point. And on Eric's call, which we are doing within Becoming the Gift You Are, so you have to be a member to receive that live and the recording. Eric's going to teach a little class. I mean, I realize as you're sharing tools, like I just get this sense they are endless. Like you have so much information to draw on and explain in really accessible ways. So Eric will be giving a teaching, and then we're going to work with one person who's in and on the journey with us to kind of work through and find some solutions in the storytelling that they're doing in their lives. And then we're going to be opening up for a Q&A at the end of the call. And it's a nice long one. It's 2 hours that we have with Eric, which is such a treat. So I have another question for you. How do you, like when a client has like a story that's not serving them, that they are just clinging to with their little monkey claw, how do you get it out of their little monkey claw?
Yeah, this is probably, I think it's a fantastic question. And frankly, it's a question that makes me anxious on behalf of people quite often. My business clients don't struggle with that as much. And this is where I think there's a big difference between personal narratives, your personal brand, if you will, and companies. So I'll talk briefly about companies and then maybe take a flyer at how we deal with that with people.
Cool.
We have had individual clients as well, but they're coming to us with very set business goals. They're one-person businesses, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose the lesson for an individual on their journey of becoming is that from companies and organizations, they're very goal-oriented, and they have responsibility to others. If they're publicly held, they have responsibility to shareholders. They certainly have a responsibility to their own people. They have their own reputations to think about. And these keep them quite critical of their stories all along. In a corporate setting, you have a strategic plan that's kind of the next level down from your vision and your mission. And those plans change as you realize them. So it might be 10 years that you've given to build a new organization and accomplish new goals. At the end of that point, move on to a new plan. You look at your vision, you look at your mission. And so I would say that there's no flip answer, but borrowing from that experience, I would say, well, look, as an individual, you might have the individual equivalent of a strategic plan in place. So here's your vision. What are the goals that you're going to accomplish in the next set period? And a strategic plan is not a short window, it's usually a longer window. So you have room to accomplish big things and really invest yourself in something. So working backwards from that vision, what are the goals? Another book that might be helpful for people. Let me see if I'm not going to go fumble on my shelf behind me here, but it's called Becoming a Warrior Within. I'll get the exact title. That might not be it, but it's written by a former Navy SEAL. Former Navy SEALs, by the way, have a massive future for themselves in writing leadership books and advice books, given the experiences that they have. And this one really does a good job of setting forth how you set up goals and then achieve them, and then move on to the next one, and then prioritize from there and on and on. So I would say if I were sitting down to work out a strategic plan with somebody, I might want them to take a look at that book and understand that this is something that works in the practical world, in everyday life, and try to maybe take some inspiration from that.
Mm.
If someone's not open to that, then I don't know how I could really help them. You know, I mean, hopefully the goal and the vision is enough of a driver to bring you forward. But I know that there are many blocks and issues that people have that go way beyond my ability to help them with or talk about.
I love that. And this comes up a lot. And, you know, it's like, this is what I have to offer. Would you like them? And I imagine that, I mean, there's already a journey you have to go through to be in business on the level that you are hiring someone like you, so that by the time that they hire you, they're just like, they're at the table with you, like looking for solutions. And they probably have already let go of a lot of personal narratives to even be there.
That's
Do you
true.
think that's true?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, if they're starting for themselves in business, are also trying to marry the personal narrative with their business narrative, which is really interesting. I mean, and they should, right? I mean, they generally, people have started from a very passionate place. It's either been a place of, you know, deep interest or sometimes great suffering, or great satisfaction that's led them to have an insight that they think will turn into something that they can sell, either a service or a product. So part of their business narrative, if you're talking about a founder of a business, is exactly that. It's marrying that personal and that business thread together. And it's fascinating. I mean, those are some of the most authentic and compelling narratives in the marketplace. And it's partly because, you know, the people truly believe them. I think they understand very clearly, because it is for market purposes, that it's not ultimately the be all and end all of who they are, which is something I touched on earlier, but it aligns with very strong traits and interests and passions that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, the book, by the way, that I was talking about, I just looked it up on Amazon. It's called Unleash the Warrior Within, and it's by Richard Machowicz. That last name is spelled Machowicz. So, brutally pragmatic book, and I think a good read for anybody who's thinking about setting up targets, if you will, and achieving a succession of goals to realize their vision.
Cool. So I want to acknowledge something as it pertains to human design, which Eric is not a human design person, but for the people that a lot of my people are. So I want to acknowledge something with that. And then I also have two questions that may be the same question. So as I want to acknowledge something about strategy, because not everybody, as we recognize through human design, is strategic. There are people who are strategic, and then there are people who are more receptive, like myself. And people who are more receptive, things get kind of drawn through them. So it can feel a lot of pressure to be strategic. And then, like, you know, it kind of can block us from, you know, this natural flow that can be really scary to trust. But I've been seeing this relationship between strategic beings and non-strategic beings, and, you know, some people are an equal mix of both. That I just want to say that I think that there is a place for people who are receptive to receive the wisdom of strategy in the way that, you know, like you're saying, that you can have a vision and then you can imagine, you know, what it might take, you know, to achieve that. But then there's, as you also said, there's that adjusting to the story as you're on the path. And I think that's where there's the room for the more receptive people. Does that make sense?
I'd love to hear what other people have to say about that. My inclination would be to agree with you completely and acknowledge the different capacity that people have to even engage with it. Um, One thing, if you're finding yourself really scattered, if you try to set down a path, down a path of thinking through your vision and your goals, would be to involve other people, which involves a high level of trust. So hopefully, if you're not strategic, you're at least somewhat trusting, or you at least have people you can turn to within the universe out there who you trust enough to have a conversation with and bring them into this as well. I mean, one of the other things that I think storytelling offers is a framework for people to use, whether they're strategically inclined or not. So, however,
Mute. Thank you.
whatever, whatever your capacity is, hopefully you can focus enough on the vision and make a connection between that at that highest level, what you're setting out to do and what's good for you, what's resonating with you inside. Again, there's a whole realm of things that I'm sure human design is probably far better at dealing with and solving and shedding light on than the processes that I know, and the two I think could be fascinating together. Completely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool is what I see, and a lot of times people are already stumbling upon their own way, as you certainly have, because of I think your clarity and your success, really, that nobody needs human design, but some people really resonate with it, and it can be a really helpful tool.
Yeah, for sure. One person asked me once, again, there's always I think it's very important to be humble about this work. And I realized that we're talking about things that might seem kind of daunting to begin, even with these exercises, or challenging to see all the way through. So, I want to make sure that I don't sit here and say, well, it's just easy, just go do this.
Yeah.
Think about that vision, think about those goals. But also, if you're thinking about something that is, if you're trying to arrive at what your strengths are, which is a whole other level to this, what are you bringing to the table to achieve this? What are your inner strengths? What's your training? All these things. It's a whole other area we haven't talked about. If it's a competitive situation in particular, there's a vision that you have that other people might be pursuing, and you've got to kind of think about that. One of the first things to ask yourself is just, what is it about you that makes you interesting? It's kind of a shorthand for getting into deeper insights around what makes you different and what gifts you have. I think if that's a hard thing for you to start to set down on paper, just think about the things that you say that tend to attract people's attention, or that you haven't heard other people saying, and maybe there's something in that. Again, probably a good thing as you do this, to have folks around you who can serve as sounding boards and maybe get into the process with you a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a perfect lead into my questions, because actually what we are creating in the Innerglowing Quantum Academy and Becoming the Gift You Are is this like really edgy, unique and supportive space for people to come together and work through their personal narratives, as they also may relate to their businesses, to get that kind of feedback, but in a safe and trusting way, right? Where we can really experiment, which is really the heart of human design, is to experiment. So yeah, other people. And, for people like me, I'm a projector. I have like my focus, my vision goes out. It doesn't go in. So when I go into self-inquiry, it can be a real rabbit hole. And so that's where, and we all have projected channels pretty much. Well, not everybody does probably, but most of the channels in the body graph are projected channels. So this is like a very human like pickle that we can be in, that is solved by relating, right? Like I can ask people like what they see in me, and then I can feel in my own body that truth and be able to see it. So the questions have to do with, Eric, I'm curious if you are seeing a shift in the atmosphere, the ether of business as it pertains to storytelling and all that we're talking about. Like, is there something going on in our time that you notice? So that's one question. And then the other question, and I have a sense it might be the same, but it's just like sound totally different. But it was like, how do you do this for a city?
Right. Well, there are definitely aspects that are similar. Yeah, and to go to the first question, I am seeing things, and they're more than sensing. They're things that I'm seeing and others are seeing too in my profession. So there's been a trend, and we all know it, towards extreme digital life, finding friendship, finding meaning, making connections through social networks is a big part of it. And we're in our personal sphere, we're realizing that in many ways we're coming up short because of the limitations of those tools. In business, there's an analogous situation, not only because businesses use social networks, but there's been a real tendency to rely on data mining. And in fact, those two are related, right? Like, Facebook has all this data on us and then turns around and abuses it, which creates all kinds of issues. So there's a tendency, the pendulum is just beginning to swing back. We're not going to reject the beauty and the power of analytics, but we're understanding that there's a natural complement in design, in being human. I won't say human design because I'm not aware of that specifically, but in our, in what we have innately as humans, in our potential, in our face-to-face, natural, biological ways of interacting, we have a lot to learn, and the real benefit of all that analytic stuff is actually through that larger framework that we tend to lose sight of, which is us as humans. So a lot of the brands that I'm working with are very analytics driven, but they're looking for their narratives as frameworks for this. So I think we're seeing a move to reconcile those things. It's probably not a pendulum. It's more of a integration or a reconciliation. That's very big. A piece of news that kind of gives light, gives some proof of this is Stanford has been looking at its engineering programs and recently announced through the media that it's bringing out more of an element of humanities and more of a human-centered approach. And then you have companies like Ford, where the CEO of Ford is not so much a number cruncher anymore as a design expert. He comes from a furniture company where experience, ergonomics, the physical and emotional aspects of what it means to be human are what's driving the way automobiles are being shaped, more so than all the data specifics. So I have an enormous respect for data, but I also think that this is a very healthy trend to integrate something.
Mm-hmm.
So,
There's one thing I want to just highlight in there, which is that, and I don't know if this is what you're getting to or not. You can let me know if I'm off at all, but like, it seems that the limitation of data is that it already happened. Like, it's the past. And when you're trying to like create something that there's a way that it's unlike anything that's ever happened.
yes and no and yes. So, I mean, people who are really deeply into data are looking for data that will allow them to predict. So looking at trends and patterns that will allow them to see what's coming. And in some cases, they're having a lot of success with this. the flip side of that, or the limitation to that success, is the stuff that lives outside of data. These are things called black swan events, for example, that no one can foresee, no one can predict, and yet when they happen, they change everything. They don't just happen and then the data goes back to driving, the same frameworks. They change, they fundamentally transform reality. They transform everything that happens. A black swan event, a classic one, is 9/11. A super negative black swan event that no one predicted. I mean, there were, little rumblings here and there, but really nobody saw that coming. And yet, our reality as a society has been shaped by that in profound ways. So those things are constantly happening, and they're again a humbling reminder that no matter how good we get at predicting, and no matter how tempted we are to keep going, and we will keep going, there are going to be these things that kind of reset reality for us along the way. So
brilliant. That is exactly why I'm doing the work I'm doing, and the people that gather with me are gathering with me, is like in human design, we recognize there is one of those coming in 2027, and we know some things about it, and we also have no fucking clue what's going to happen.
Well,
so
I have to jump in there and say, one might be that whatever is coming in 2027 comes in 2026. Or 2028. I mean, that's the whole point, is that we think we know, and it could.
And it's coming right now. I think we are feeling the influence of it in a way that Tom says, I love that. I am a black swan event. But these are, again, these milestones or initiations that we experience, and the whole premise here that I'm recognizing, one of the tools we work with initiation, I call the sequence of initiation, which is shock. Like, we can expect there's going to be a shock, which means we won't know what it is, but we'll know we'll be shocked. And then there's integration, which Eric's month of April, we are working with integration because we're just coming through a shock month with the equinox. And so we're shocked, and then we have this, wow, like the blinders are pulled back, and we have all this information, and then we start to make sense of it, right? So we're working with stories in April. And then the third part of that sequence is preparation. And then, we get a little break, and we can kind of cruise, and we can harvest the tools, and we can practice them and apply them to prepare for the next shock, which we know is coming. We have no fucking clue what it's going to be, but we might be a little better for going through that cycle awake.
Good stuff. I think it'll be a great journey for those of you who are, who are on it. The question might be, well, how can my story help me in the face of all this? And I would hope that stories are tools for being resilient. So much as they provide frameworks for meaning and feeling things, because they're a certain kind of framework, we can use them, A, to power us through, and B, to look critically at the, at the structure of our lives, at our patterns, and have some basis for altering them, when the time is right. I don't know why exactly I'm sensing this right now, probably because this was an earlier call from this morning that I had, but I don't know how this quite fits in. I'm working with the Museum of the American Indian in Washington, D.C., and they've never had a backstory to help them with their marketing goals, and it's been really tough for them and tough for me in a good way, because the museum is fundamentally about people, Native peoples, who have struggled to control their narrative, own their narrative, and have their narrative be the one that gets out there, or one of the main one, not to be co-opted. And I don't know, somehow that's playing in this too. Maybe it has to do with your second question about developing a brand for a city.
Yeah, a collective group of many different kinds of people.
Right. So let's go back to strategy for a minute, which is something you talked about, and ask ourselves, well, what is good strategy? And this isn't original with me, but it's just kind of generally agreed upon that in the business world anyway, good strategy has some components to it. And one is that it edits things out. You can't be all things to all people is a truism in the brand world, in a lot of worlds. So you've got to narrow down and edit things that you're going to focus on. Your story isn't every single thing in your reality. It's a selected set that works in a way, in a sequential way, in a meaningful way, in an emotionally resonant way. So that's one aspect. It's really important for this whole question about groups. And then the pieces have to hang together well. So it's not just that you're editing them, but they're not scattershot. They don't feel schizophrenic or purely coincidental. They actually work together. So that's the second aspect of strategy. And I don't remember the third right now, but it probably doesn't matter for the point. Which is, when you're talking about a group, you have to, and this goes, this is the whole thing with the American Indian Museum, is it's not the ultimate reality. This isn't the detailed, true, ultimate history of a city or of a people. It's a construct that you've built to achieve a goal. If the goal of the city is maximizing talent attraction, let's say, then certain things are going to be more relevant in the city than others. And somebody who's asking that story, which is designed to attract talent, to be emotionally resonant for a lifetime resident, may not find that there because that's not its purpose. So we always have to be very clear again about what is the goal of this thing. And the stories again that we're talking about on this call are not what is the meaning of my life, but stories around how do I fulfill a certain vision that I have, which might be very close to meaning in my life. It might give my life, its meaning, but it's not the same thing exactly.
Oh, wow. I feel that's so deep. Like, I just got chills and I can feel tears just pushing. Whew. It's so tender.
Stuff. It's fun. This is a great stuff to think about and feel.
It is. It is. Thank you so much for being here. And, I can really hear in that last piece, I imagine for Detroit, and you're very intimate with that city. You spend a lot of time there. I know there's a lot of love there for you. And again, this is just what I'm imagining. I didn't get this from Eric, but that there's a story of how Detroit is down and out, and it's maybe a really scrappy place to live. But then when you're talking about attracting talent there, that there's the story of opportunity that can serve the residents who have been there all along and maybe through it all, to the vision that they have for what Detroit would be like.
Yeah, that's a very clear observation. That makes a lot of sense. And again, one of the interesting things for me and challenging things for me in this conversation is that the stories I'm working with are really dependent on specific audiences and specific goals. And to some extent, I think the story that we're talking about here is a story where you're kind of the audience, right? It's what's working for you primarily. And that gets tricky there, right? You're relying on yourself more. You've got to find ways to be self-critical, but not shut yourself down. That's again where having input from others is very important. And maybe also, and I'm just thinking out loud, as you achieve set out to achieve the goals and create those milestones, probably you're going to want to look at milestones that are external, not just internal moments where you feel an epiphany or you feel you've grown in some way, but some validation from the world at large that you're on the right path, some sense of reward, some sense of progress that has some reflection in the outside world.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Well, I'm feeling that we're coming to a completion, so I want to check in with you and see if there's anything else you'd like to add. Um,
I'm just curious to know what people's questions might be to start down a path on their own where they're thinking about these things.
yeah, yeah, cool. Um, so this conversation is recorded and I'll be posting it on YouTube and Facebook. So the conversation can continue. Questions can be asked in the comments there, and we can continue to play with this in that space. And there is, of course, the class that Eric is teaching on April 3rd within Becoming the Gift You Are. So there will be links accompanying these these posts, but the website is innerglowing.com, and then you'll navigate to the Becoming the Gift You Are 2019 page, and you can enroll for the monthly offering there and come and witness Eric, or maybe even be the person who he works with on that call, ask questions there directly. And oh, I'm closing enrollment the day before this, just so we can focus on our work in the group. And Tom's like, pick me, pick me. Tom has a really big, beautiful vision, actually specifically for Detroit. Yeah, and he's in Becoming the Gift You Are, so I know he's super excited that to be working with you in April. And so yeah, but I will be closing enrollment for a number of weeks, like I think 6 weeks, so that we can just focus on what we're doing. Then I'll open it up again in time for June enrollment. So if you're resonating with Eric and you want to like have a connection with him directly in Becoming the Gift You Are, come and join us and co-create with us. We're going to be integrating a lot. It's been a really big month, March. Holy moly. So I think it's a good time to come and get support on your personal narratives, for sure, in my opinion. So thank you so much, Eric, for your time and your care and your expertise.
All right.
Sharing with us.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. That's all for today.
Bye.
Have a wonderful whatever day. Ciao.